the ex-official chairman of the Committee of Student Welfare. Yeah. So without further ado, I'd like to open the nominations to the floor. Yes, Ren.
Ren Kai asks nominate SOC David. Clovis.
Mr. Clovis, do you accept? Is there any other nomination? If not, Mr. Clovis, you have half an hour presentation as well as up to 1 hour of Q&A that is subject to extension.
There will be no slides for this presentation because I didn't really prepare for the slides. But first of all, I want to thank Ren Kai and congratulate all the combos for getting in. In fact, I kind of feel a sense of relief right now. Okay, I want to assure the council that I'll give everything for welfare, and the welfare is something really important to me. I'll support Ren Kai in his plans, and I'll give everything to see his plans come to fruition, especially his one of his drivers, which is welfare-centric NUSSU. On a more personal note, welfare is something that's really important and close to the hearts of the students, and we need to differentiate between the needs and wants, and there are many aspects which I've shared just now during my presentation. At the end of the day, the heart of the student is about the hearts of the student. It's about general welfare of the student. It's about how much we really want to give back to the students, not just because they pay their $8, but more so because we want to show that we are a union that cares. I work very closely with the Welfare Standing Committee as well as all members of my welfare cell to follow up on what Rong Sing has done this year, and to further leverage on expertise throughout the council to actually meet with and work very closely with the welfare directors of each constituent clubs, and to find ways and actually to create an environment in the union that is not just based on activities and events, but one that is really welfare centric and welfare focused. Yeah, so with that I end my speech and I'll proceed with the question and answer.
After finishing the speech, so I shall propose the opening of the Q&A session. Any objection? So the Q&A session will be 1 hour long. Yeah. Anyone?
Martin and Jin, I spoke about working together with welfare directors of different faculty clubs. What do you think is the ideal working relationship that you foresee to have with different working directors?
So the question, I'll just go back to whatever I presented during my presidential nomination speech. What I believe in is just really a relationship that it's not confined to email correspondence, but one that really goes down, and I will hope that the welfare cell will actually do it with me, to actually go down and meet the welfare director to see what their concerns, because I believe that's more effective than just email correspondence. And I would want to work very closely with the welfare directors because welfare is an important aspect of all 14 con clubs, and welfare is something that is in our union vision, and I really want to ensure that welfare is protected, safeguarded, upheld, and especially in the union. Yeah, that answers your question.
I mentioned the 14 con clubs, which includes the 4 non-faculty clubs. So in what specific way do you think they can help the non-faculty clubs in terms of welfare?
Well, for the the welfare approach is different, very much different for the faculty clubs and non-faculty clubs, and we understand that for the non-faculty clubs, what welfare, something that maybe bugs them would probably be like the facilities they use, the charges they pay, and those little things that actually affect their day-to-day running. For example, CAC and the the booking of the recital studios and everything. So for me, welfare exists not just based on tangible, not just based on academic, but as many other aspects. And we'll work very closely to really hear from them what they really need, and actually to further and enhance the experience, especially for people that these 4 non-faculty clubs represent.
Shida, it's such a good question. You mentioned, I think your presentation slide a few sessions that we had, we wanted for NUSSU's welfare initiatives to be more representative of NUSSU in the sense that people should identify that it's NUSSU initiated. And you also talked about how there should be more presence of people there. In a sense, do you see any way that you can partner with all the faculty clubs to help you with that presence and that to let them identify that such initiatives are brought about by the students?
Actually, most definitely, because I view that relationship as one that's positive, and we will look at ways we can actually go down to faculty clubs to actually see how, because every faculty club, the environment is different, the needs are different, even though we're both from faculty clubs, our needs are different. So for me, it's really working not just with the welfare director, but also with the MC and whoever that wants to be involved in this way of actually exploring the presence of NUSSU via not just exploring the presence of NUSSU, but understanding the real needs and the wants of students and see how we can balance both requirements. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Clovis, Rongsing Business. I have a question. Just now, if I recall correctly, during your presentation speech, you mentioned that tangible welfare will be one of the focus. In your definition, what is tangible welfare and how do you intend to carry it out?
For me, tangible welfare is welfare that students can feel, students can see, and students can actually, it's of use to them, not something that they cannot use and cannot identify with. So for me, that's one definition of tangible welfare. The other aspect of tangible welfare is us to actually give to the students what they really need, not something that we feel that they need or what they want. For example, if they want everyone $2 off today, then that's not tangible welfare. Yes, they can feel it, but it's not the tangible welfare we're working towards too. And we're working very closely with the NUSSU Welfare Committee chairperson to actually front these events, as I believe like they have the expertise and they have the manpower to actually help in the running of this sort of events. And the second part of the question is...
No, you kind of answered it.
Okay, thank you.
One more question.
Oh.
Rongsing Business. If you were to critique something about welfare cell this year, what would that be?
First and foremost, actually welfare cell did a good job, but one thing that could be improved could be, like I mentioned in my presidential speech, is to close the loop. Sometimes students, yes, they eat the apple, yes, they eat the cone, yes, they get their breakfast, but it ends there. So we need to have the closing loop, and I work very closely with the communication cell to bring that idea across to the students, to actually let them know that okay, the union is doing this because of these reasons. And for me, that will leave a more lasting impression than just rolling out initiatives. Okay.
We engineers. Actually, this is a question that a lot of us seniors actually debated before. So I just want to hear your opinions. So let's say if we have this sum of money, let's say $1,000, how would you actually give back to the students? I have two options for you. So could you tell me your preference or the reason why? First option is you give 1,000 students $1 each, or either that you actually buy like items of higher value, for example like foolscap pads, pens, notebooks, all those things that may cost more than $1 per unit, but only a few hundred students can actually receive them. Which one will you choose, and can you tell us why?
The $1 is $1 worth of something.
A coin, maybe ang pao money or maybe you will rebate or something.
Well, it's a rebate, then and for example $1 maybe canteen voucher rebate, I think I will go for that, because it hits a wider audience and every student gets to benefit and no one is left between the cracks. As for foolscap pad, I think it's a good idea, but one problem could be that it may not be a need, you see. It may just be what we assume that the students want just because they're students they need foolscap pad. So I think by spending a little bit more on that will actually may actually lead us to actually waste resources. So something I think it's a very nice abstract question. So I would want students to, I want to hit the wider audience. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
David from Medicine. I want to ask, what's your view of the use of welfare surveys on the impact of that on your direction as well as on the students? Because every year we do these welfare surveys and we collate them. So where do you foresee them being utilized?
For me, welfare surveys are important to gather certain feedbacks and statistics, because it's only through that we have something to substantiate whatever we want to do. as for sometimes we do a survey and then we don't see immediate results. I think there needs to be an explanation, and yes, I'll work with all the respective cell heads and especially the communication secretary to actually push this sort of, give the students a reason, let the students know why certain issues are not done, why certain issues are being raised. So for that question, I see the welfare survey as something important for us to have to substantiate our reasons for doing certain things. For example, like you saw the survey of the bus and everything, so it actually gives a little bit more weight to whatever we intend to do in the future.
Sorry, just to follow up.
Yeah.
So what do you, because we know that students don't really like to do very long surveys. So if you had to choose, right, would you want your welfare survey to be more of a survey on student perception, or do you want the welfare survey to be more of an informative role for the students, or what other purpose do you think?
Informative role?
So you, as in, would you like the survey itself to be something that gauges, that is a gauge of how well the NUSSU EXCO is doing, welfare cell is doing, or would you like it to be more of information gathering to propose new initiatives?
Actually, for me, both are fundamentally different things. For me, if we want to do a survey that gets how the sentiments, I think we should just focus on that. How the welfare cell is doing would be something I would like probably, because instead of just throwing out to the school at large, probably start with the council to actually give us a feedback on how we can improve, and I'll work closely, especially with not only the cell people but the standing committee people to actually deal with this situation. Yeah.
Okay, how do you plan to attend to international students in terms of their welfare?
Okay, international students are an important part of our everyday lives because you see more and more of them increasing. So if need be, I will work closely with the IRC, NUSSU IRC, to see how we can better integrate. Welfare for them may be different from our views of welfare, especially for local students. So I would look and see how we can actually integrate better and actually give welfare that is beneficial for them, welfare that they really need. Because right now I do not have a concrete plan of how I'm going to engage the international students, but I'll be looking forward to exploring, especially that channel. Thank you.
I think I look here, I'm very stressed.
That is science. I think during your speech earlier and right now you're talking a lot about tangible welfare. Even things like enhancing welfare packs, which I recall from the very first slide, and things like giving out more tangible welfare. The thing I'd like to ask you about is how sustainable is it? Because tangible welfare, after all, we are actually pumping in money to purchase items for the student population. In terms of financial stability, how sustainable is such a thing in actually increasing by increasing all these things? What's the sustainability in that? Second is managing expectations. Because you actually pump in so much, how do you sustain it even for the next batch to continue and subsequent batches?
Okay.
And does that in essence actually affect or have a backlash on what you're doing right now?
Okay, so I'll talk about the sustainability part first. I agree that we do pump in money to fund this sort of initiatives, but I see as money worth spending, and I will discuss closely with the financial secretary to actually see how much of the pie we can cut for this event, because for this initiative, because I feel welfare for students, look at our vision, it's something we need to do. We need to safeguard their welfare and uphold their welfare. And for me, I spoke a lot about tangible welfare, but it's not the only welfare that I'm interested in. Actually, there are many other aspects. Tangible welfare is something that I was rolling out for my presidential speech, but when it comes to my current job scope now, if I'm elected, really, it's not just about tangible welfare. And I think, for example, academic welfare is important. So gathering feedbacks and other things which do not need to spend money on would be something I'm looking forward to working with all, involving the CQ if they need be discussion on the higher level or even on the ground level. So not just tangible welfare, but welfare on a whole. But in terms of expenditure-wise, I agree with you, tangible welfare will require more money, and I'll discuss closely with the financial secretary. Yeah. And the second part of the question is, sorry,
in terms
Dream.
of managing expectation, I give a scenario for you. For instance, this year I received so much tangible welfare. Every day I get a free apple. Then comes the next year that because this sort of spending cannot actually be sustained for a long time, and next year there's actually a budget cut in that sense, and the next year I don't receive free apples every day. That's the expectation. And how do you actually account to students on things that happen in terms of managing expectations? Because when you throw in too much, you cannot sustain it, then what do you do?
For me, I mean, I've spoken to the outgoing welfare side. I think we have come to this agreement that welfare is not pampering the students. Then there needs to be a fine line between pampering and actually giving out welfare that is not only required, but welfare that the amount of quantum should be to be decided not because we want to please the students, but because we want to give back to the students in that sense. And for it to be sustainable, for me, it's not overspending on 1 year and expecting every year to be the same thing, because humans, we have this natural tendency to expect the same thing we received the year before. So for me, it's really rationalizing everything, giving reasons of why we do this, and why, if for example the next year, why we are not doing the same thing. Are there certain reasons? Are there reasons for a budget cut? Are there so for me, it boils down to the whole communication with the students thing. If people are on this, if the students know what the welfare cell is actually doing for them, I believe this thing will go a little more further than just us throwing them welfare, expecting them to believe the union is doing something for them. Thank you.
Stephen Wesson. Okay, it's kind of a follow-up. So the current mentality is that NUSSU welfare should do something because we ought to do it, and if we don't, we are screwed up. So do you expect that you can change up the viewpoint, and if so, how?
Well, for the first part of the question, students' perception is they think that we ought to do things, we should do things. But in fact, if you think about it on another point of view, we are really there to ensure that happens. So whatever they think, it all boils down to perception again. Whatever they think at the end of the day, should not be the fact that how come they're not giving us anything. More like we on our side should be saying we should be there giving them something. So is this reversal, the turning of tables? For me, it's very simple, because we all know that the current perception of the union is not at its best state. So I think Renka has plans to actually work that foundation before we actually roll out, like what I say, roll out end results that have no foundation for the students to believe in the first place. So that's for the first part. What's the second part of the question?
If so, how about you can't answer it already?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still following up at this point. It's on tangible welfare. How do you justify spending more money on a form of welfare that will not affect the majority of the student population?
Which links very much to what Hingli has asked me just now. For me, I want a welfare initiative that doesn't only benefit a small group of people. For example, welfare packs. I mean, yes, that will still happen. Like for me, we're talking about this ad hoc sort of welfare. I want welfare that will reach the average intensity being high, and not just a certain group of students who are in know get it, but more like the whole, as much as possible, because we sometimes more than not we cannot cater to 25,000 students and give each of them something. So it's really casting our nets and getting more people being receiving the welfare.
But clearly, if you want to enhance the welfare pack, you can't have the best of both worlds, right?
Most definitely. So for me, welfare pack distribution and welfare pack distribution and welfare initiatives are two different things. Welfare pack distribution should be it's for us. It's every time we do have this welfare pack distribution, which we cannot give every single student, because it's like probably the first 400 or first 500 depending on faculty size. So for that, what we are doing is to enhance the welfare pack so that students who eventually receive it will actually see a possible use for the things inside. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is tangible welfare, which I spoke about earlier on, would be even though both are tangible welfare, for me, this aspect of rolling out initiatives to the students should reach the more the merrier, in fact. So the money, for example, I have $20 to do this. All $20 will be spent on getting the most out of it, instead of $20 worth of maybe something more up class and only a few people can get. Does that answer your question?
Okay, one last. It's just the welfare pack that you tend to enhance for the 500 people or so. I'm still not very sure how are you going to justify it. Let's not talk about you talking to the financial secretary. How would you justify it?
we don't. Okay, maybe we have a small sum of money that we put in to enhance the welfare pack, for example, foolscap pads and everything. But by and large, all the stuff in the welfare pack is actually sponsored, and we intend to work with the faculty's welfare director to ensure that whatever they have, so it's a collaboration, and I would actually see that I work closely with the faculty welfare directors to ensure not only good working relationships, but relationships that will, for me it's very important to not only know them because of their work, but for me to actually get to know certain issues. So for me, welfare pack distribution, right, could be something we look like. I mean, what you mentioned about the 500 bags, not of and we cannot really substantiate why we actually do certain things. The 500 bags, I mean, what we get from OSA last year, I can give some background. OSA did their own welfare pack giveaway, and we did have a crisis meeting with them, and they did actually mention some to certain measure, like they would actually work closely with us. So for me, that was a green light for me to actually trickle that down to faculty club level. So I see enhancing welfare pack not in spending more money, but to see how we can cooperate with different people to actually give a welfare pack that students would be happy to receive, and not one that they just take because of one foolscap paper and one pen inside it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Thank you.
That's his question. Thank you.
Before I go on at this point, I'd just like to encourage the audience to actually ask questions other than just the tangible welfare packs or welfare packs, because actually NUSSU welfare is much more than that. There are still infrastructure, transport, food and retail, and academics, as well as residents. So there are many other aspects. So please don't just focus on one. Sorry. Yeah.
So I'm from science. So it's actually a question regarding the tangible part again. Actually, will you rather compromise on quality or quantity?
Quality or quantity? For me, is like what you say. I don't think we get the best of both worlds. But when I say quantity, I want to focus on quantity. I don't mean giving crappy welfare, but really to work with the team to actually come up with welfare initiatives that are actually beneficial to the wider audience. So I don't think we can see it as getting more for less, or getting more quality for less, or less quality for more, but more like really, for me, it's the outreach intensity, and not just that, but having welfare initiatives that students would be happy to receive, not just like, okay, what's this random pen that doesn't even work, something like that, you know. So yeah, I that's how I view that situation. Thank you.
Wilson asks, two-part question. Apart from all the tangible stuff you've seen, I'm actually quite interested in financial aid. So I would like to ask, what is your take on financial aid, and do you think there's any more, like considering the fact that financial aid is usually administered by the school, do you think there's anything more that the council can do to enhance the delivery of financial aid to the needy students?
For me, school's financial aid is really how they conduct their interviews and their sort of prerequisites and everything. So but at union level, we have this thing by Students Fund, which is the BABG, the book awards and book grants, and they have their own way of deciding who receives that. And for me, it's really sitting down with them and seeing how they actually work that out, and actually coming up with, I mean, why they come up with this amount of money for this amount of students, and really to not say question them, but probably sit down and actually discuss with them these issues, because I see that it's an important aspect. Yeah.
In that case, I guess that we all know that there are needy students who actually, even the subsidies of the school cannot even provide enough for what they're going through in school. So I think it's a bit specific, but I still like to ask whether, like in this case when we need to ascertain certain criteria, whether students are eligible for BAVG, stuff like that. Are you like, would you take a very overarching approach, or because you're awarded this, we should give other students a chance, or will you like go by a needs basis, like, oh, because you did this, even though you have it, you still get it?
I think it's an overarching approach. I think they have their algorithms and the way they actually calculate who receives what. So for me, I trust in the way they calculate not only who receives, but how much they should be receiving. So for that question, I agree with you. Sometimes we feel that I need this a little bit more, and then why is he getting it? So these are certain things that for me maybe it's a need, you see. So maybe it's a want. So what really is a need? So for me, the BABG's algorithm and mechanisms are working, and I have no questions and qualms about that.
Sandra, nice. So each of us have a cell to work with. So very often when we talk about welfare, then we only think about the welfare set. So maybe you can share with us what kind of structure you have for your welfare cell, and yeah, I just want to know like what kind of things your cell is.
Okay. Let me just think through. Okay, because I haven't really talked much with Rong-Sing about the structure yet and what works best. But currently this year, what the structure is there's a welfare set with 2 deputies in charge of not only liaising the officers, but with 2 separate groups of assistant welfare secretary. Assistant welfare secretary managing in micro areas such as, for example, transport, for example, accommodations, housing, and food and wellness. And so for me, this is the structure I'm working towards too, and I'll be speaking a lot with Rong-Sing the next few days if I'm elected to see how we can fine-tune this issue, and perhaps to even co-opt the welfare committee chairperson into the picture so that he can have a better view. And I'm sure with his expertise and his team, I'm sure he'll give a positive sort of feedback, especially to the welfare cell, which can operate then on a more optimal basis. Thank you. Yeah.
Augustine. Yeah, my name is Augustine from USP Arts. I'm also the chief editor for The Ridge. Just so I give some context, right? I've been live tweeting the elections. So one of my readers have been very insistent in asking this question. So this is not my question. I'm just asking him a question. So he just wants to know, is NUSSU interested in pushing for dental coverage in certain insurance? So yeah, it's not my question. I just asking him a question.
Dental coverage. So then again, it goes down to need and want. Will that person Steve? How am I going to phrase this? For me, health coverage is an important aspect because in case we fall ill at any point in time, we are covered by. We can go and see the doctors at UAC. But for dental wise, I see it more as a want more than a need. So I mean, but that's a good question actually.
Okay, point of information. This is something that the current welfare team was working on. Something with the concept of Blue Star, we wanted to have something similar, where if you were to flash your matric card at some corporate company, corporate dental clinics or private dental clinics, you actually get some student discounts. But we are still in the talks and nothing is concrete yet, and hence nothing is rolled out. But the current welfare cell, and I hope after I step down, the next welfare cell will also look into health and wellness, which is part of tangible welfare as well. So it doesn't encompass just dental care, but health in a general sense. Yeah. So we have this memorandum signed with HPV, and we are working with them closely. Point of information.
Just to clarify, right? I understand that dental is just one part of health, but is it something that if you are elected, you will look into?
That's for him to answer.
But most definitely, like I think one thing that she mentioned, which is quite good, is to actually work with Blue Star to see how we can incorporate this sort of discounts for them. And since it's under the umbrella of holistic wellness of the students, I think we'll look into it. Well, I mean, I don't overpromise and say there will be, but it definitely is a case that we'll look into. Thank you.
Maybe from Sia from engineering. I'd like to touch on the RAS system, residential admission systems. I'd like to ask your stand on the principles behind the administration of the RIS systems. Would it be more on a merit-based or a need-based in terms of allocation of spaces to students?
Merit-based. Who actually give their time and sacrifice their time for whatever activities, be it at club level or at union level. So for me, it's really a mix of both. And if we, at the end of the day we still have allocations available for us, most definitely we will look at needs basis again.
So if I may clarify, it will be the first priority will be first merit based. Then if you have any leftover, then we can look into the need based.
I mean, the way we put it, like not very nice, but something along balancing both of them together. Yeah.
David from medicine. You mentioned that you are a very people relations person, and that gathering feedback is a huge part of NUSSU welfare. So in your opinion, how would you go about ensuring that the voice you hear from the ground is actually a representative voice from everyone and not just from selected groups of people or friends that you are close to? And how would you work with yourself to achieve that? Yeah, so there are two parts.
Okay, for the first part, ensuring that it's a representative of all students. I think we already come to a common agreement that sometimes more than not we cannot get the total cooperation for all students. So what we can do is really not just the outreach intensity, but I see the welfare cell working in a way whereby it's more than just surveys, more than just email correspondence, but really to go out. And I think it doesn't just I don't see it existing just in the welfare cell. I believe other cell members, from other cells can actually assist, because welfare is really an important aspect for all students in NUS. And first and foremost, we should be a welfare, according to one of his drivers again, welfare-driven NUSSU, but not forgetting the fact that sometimes whatever we do, like was mentioned by the communication secretary, whatever we do sometimes don't get translated to the general student at large. So we'll be looking at ways and probably coming in discussions, especially in this issue, to ensure that students can voice out and there are avenues for them to voice out, not just limited to surveys and email blasts. Yeah, for the second part of the question, sorry.
How would you work with your welfare cell to ensure that all the different channels are monitored? Yeah.
Okay, so channel-wise, it's really much of myself working with communication cell. As for the welfare aspect, first of all, I'll need to meet the cell and tell them sort of like my ideology for the whole cell and perhaps how we are going to work this situation. I think only then I can give you a more concrete. For me, it's right now really, I don't want it to be just focused on surveys and doing what our job scope, but really more on that, really going out to the people and really seeing what they really need.
Yeah, actually, I'm more wondering about the division of labor, or how you can make sure that it's not just conducting the surveys, but actually monitoring what is happening on the ground. Is there such a mechanism in your plan? And yeah, if so, how do you think?
Actually, it's a very good idea, and I will look to incorporate that into my plans. But really, as in, I have not sat down and really say, oh, this is what I want to have. But most definitely, when I discuss with Rong Sing and with the people in the welfare cell, and especially the cell heads, the incoming cell heads, probably will come to a more concrete sort of idea. But most definitely, that's an important aspect.
We all started off as organizations to promote the welfare of students, but over time, even the faculty clubs and even the NUSSU EXCO, somehow we are seen as events organization now instead of a welfare organization. So how has you as a welfare sec, if you to become the welfare sec, how to change this image?
For me, the events will still go on. Events at the end of the day will still go on. The things they set for themselves will still go on. But like what I mentioned in my slide for presidential elections was really not to be so focused on events. Yes, events are important, but then again, if we can't even settle this aspect of welfare, we shouldn't be talking so much about events and all the KPIs we're supposed to meet. So your question is, how am I going to ensure that?
Change the impression of people that.
So it boils down to perception.
Mindset,
yeah, it boils down to perception again. In how do people perceive the union. So, like what I mentioned just now, we can roll out a lot of things, but if the students do not do not perceive the union the way, I mean, not the way they should, but more like do not change the perception of the union. No matter what we do, there's always going to be people that are going to be still unhappy and everything. So it all starts from the way they, like what I mentioned in the process, the way they actually view and the way they actually perceive the union. And I work for that, for the matter, I work very closely with the cell heads to actually ensure, to see their plans and how they actually want to change their perception. But if I'm elected as welfare sec, the things that will go on would still go. I'll check with Rong Sing and see how we can follow up with the things that she has done this year. And if not just doing whatever she has done, but more like how we can enhance and further make better the welfare aspect. So that answers the welfare side of your question. Thank you.
Second question.
Okay.
What do you think are the difficulties of faculty welfare committee?
Faculty welfare com.
Yeah.
For me, for the School of Computing, the welfare committee. I'll give you an example of School of Computing because I'm from the School of Computing. NUSS Computing Club, it's a club that really wants to have welfare for its students, especially in times of, like, for example, mugging for your finals, and then you have like food placed outside study lounge to actually give to the students. So, but that really doesn't translate into general welfare for the students. So one of the big things is sometimes whatever we plan for, whatever we feel that it's beneficial for the students, we may not be reached to most of the students. So that's probably one of the problems. The second problem would probably be, like what I mentioned just now, sometimes what we perceive the students need may not be actually what they really need. And maybe we should, I think Con Club's welfare directors and perhaps do have welfare surveys for their faculties as well. In fact, last year, the NUSSU EXCO collaborated with the welfare directors and the MCs from each of the Con Clubs to actually roll out a welfare survey for the students. And you were a welfare director last year, right? Yeah, so probably that, for me, like what I mentioned just now, surveys, yes, they will still go on, but I don't want to be restricted to just surveys, and probably work with, especially the welfare directors, to see how we can work a sort of a better solution for this problem which still exists in the midst of our students. Thank you.
Do you think there's a fundamental difference between student organization being welfare-centric and being like a welfare state? Do you think there's a fundamental difference between these two?
Yes, there is. So what I mentioned just now, I don't believe in pampering. Welfare state for me is really, it's a sort of pampering for the people, and I don't believe in pampering students because by and large they will expect us to do the same thing, if not more, the following year or the following term. So I believe us as your the first thing you described. Yeah, welfare-centric organization more than a welfare state. That's it.
On your question. Having said that, right, do you foresee a threat of us being moving towards the welfare state? Since we have been hearing a lot on welfare initiatives and directions being very much focused on welfare.
I think one of the fundamental things that we need to understand is the reason why we are mentioning so much about welfare is because really it's the heart of all the students in NUS. But then again, like I mentioned, we shouldn't be indulging too much in that, but taking on the more macro issues as well. Because welfare doesn't just exist on tangible welfare, or it has academic welfare, it has perhaps things like ISB and things like how we can actually reach class earlier via the ISB, and macro issues such as what I mentioned just now, like how competent our TAs are. These are little things that are welfare as well, not just us rolling out initiatives. Yeah.
David from Medicine. It is a question from Zelik, the academic personnel in charge for assistant welfare cell. So he wants to ask you two questions, two parts. So, hold on. First part is, how much ownership the union should take in one's learning?
Oh, answer on that. Okay, so learning is an important part. It's actually one of the fundamental reasons why we are actually in the university. So it's an important aspect.
Then his second part is actually how you perceive academic welfare for the students. Yeah.
Oh.
What do you
should I bring back my slides for that? academic welfare is, for example, NUSSU EXCO has been constantly involved in both undergraduate studies, the meetings, and I see academic welfare as one person that not only works with me, but works with the other acad directors around school to actually find out certain pertinent issues that actually bother the students. Because, for example, a problem that computing students may face, especially in terms of academic, may be different from one BZ students may face. So it's really different. And for his question, I believe having this sort of ideas from each of the 14 con clubs will actually help in that aspect. Does that answer the question? Okay, thank you.
And sorry, there's another part. The last one is there's an education minister dialogue coming up. Yeah. So if there is one issue that you want to raise with regards to acad, what would it be?
Okay, for me, I mentioned just now as should all electives be CSU if we want to encourage learning. And the very reason why we introduced the EXU system for electives, for non-faculty based electives is really to encourage learning. Then why not just let all be CSU? And yeah, this is just one of the issues. Yeah.
CSE, the Student Welfare Secretary works very closely with the President on a few committees or commissions that has discussion, work closely with the school officers. How do you describe your working relationship with Ren?
Other than the competition, I think we work quite well, and I see things from his perspective as well. So for me, the competition is we shouldn't base our working relationship on the competition, and it's something of the past right now. For me, it's not important. For me, it's how we actually move forward to fight for the welfare for the students and working closely with all the stakeholders here especially. So not really about whatever happened during the presidential election. For me, I congratulate him and I congratulate those who have been elected, but I don't see that as a hindrance to our working relationship because I know that we'll be staying a few comps together. And for that to work out, I believe in actually sitting down with him and to discuss with him, especially how he views the welfare committee and how the welfare is going to run next year. But that being said, I will have my own ideas of how I want to see welfare, and I will obviously speak with Rong Sing to see what she has installed. I mean, she does have future direction because most definitely she doesn't want to leave welfare in the wrong hands because it's an important aspect of the union. So I hope that answers the question.
I understand that it's important to follow up for the sake of continuity on the current initiatives already rolled out by Rong Sing. Perhaps you can share with us if you can think of any new initiative that on your own that you would like to see being started and pushed through for your term as a welfare secretary.
Well, something that students will use and students will actually appreciate. Something, for example, I just give you something that comes off my mind right now. Thumb drive, for example. Because from what I know, thumb drives, the cost of thumb drives are actually dwindling nowadays. And for me, like I mentioned, when I say the cost of thumb drive, I actually keep in mind the financial aspect. And why thumb drives? Because students will need to use thumb drives in one way or another. Yes, I know there's cloud computing and things that you can put in Dropbox that you don't thumb drive, but thumb drive is still for me something that students will appreciate more than things that we assume that they need. Yeah. So this is one of the things, and how I'm going to bring it across to students is that we are students too, we know that you need this because we are using it as well. So we're going to roll this out to you. Yeah.
David Mason, sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, right, actually the welfare cell works behind the scenes on issues that nobody in the school really understands or realize. So one current issue that is very hot is the shuttle bus incident, the crowding, overcrowding and the congestion on the roads mornings or during other peak hours. So what's your take on the issue and how would you go about what
Like I mentioned just now in my speech, I believe in alleviating the situation as best as we can, come up with initiatives as an EXCO, as a collective mind in council, to see perhaps which express road is better, which way is better, to actually give our take to the relevant officers and not just accept everything that's thrown down on us, because at the end of the day, we are the ones that are taking the bus every day. We are the ones that know where the crowd happens. We are the ones that knows certain regions where there's overcrowding and certain regions where the services are not utilized. So for me, it's really the bottom-up approach for us to actually be on the ball, for us to actually come up with ideas and come up with things that with not just coming up with problems that happen, but more of solutions that we have along with the problems that we identify. Yeah, thank you.
Are there any more questions from the floor?
Just from last proposal closing hearing.
The seconders. Any objection? Okay, no objections. The Q&A session is now over. A round of applause for the
Can see, right?
You all can crowd around if you all want.
You all can crowd around, okay? 1. 1. Boy. Boy. 1. 1.
20.
1.
21 to be tilted.
1. 1. 1. Boy. 1.
Oh dear.
0. 1.
Actually, you can use the mic.
1. 0.
Here we get it. We get
1.
2 defeats in a day. Kill myself.
1.
Wait till you leave.
1. 1. 0. 1. 1.
Oh my god, he's not going to get it. He's not getting it.
1.
One more.
Just let it. Oh my god, no, he's not enough. Just
1.
I got it.
1. 1. Tally.
4.
4.
3. Sorry.
Okay. 3 against. 23, 4. And 5 white votes.
Does it tally? 31.
Okay, 31, correct. Okay, 23 above 31. Pass. I written Clovis as the welfare secretary of the 34th.